What up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? Matty P here with a episode of Steelers Touch and Under. Missing my co-host Marky D today, but so excited to be with our live audience. And if you're listening to this on record as well, don't forget that you can definitely comment. We will come back to you as well. Already in the live chat there, we've got Devil as always first in, Gene Smith, George is in there as well. So really good to see on this lovely, as I go live Friday evening, Saturday morning in the Australia for me. But look, Steelers play the Rams this week. They're coming off the bye. Pretty crazy week in terms of everything that's been going on in terms of the injuries, who's back, who's not. The Matt Canada narrative to the point, we've heard over the last few weeks, he's been jeered at a Pittsburgh Penguins game, which is pretty crazy. So a lot of these narratives going into this week's game, I'm just really excited to have football back. It was kind of nice with everything that's been going on to have a break last week, but at the same time, it is really nice to be getting football back. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for as Steel fans. And George says, hey, Matty, as well. Hey, George, good to see you. So I think a really important thing to do if we're going to preview the game, and that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the matchup. I'm going to work my way through, how does the Steelers O-line match up against the LA Rams defensive line? How does the Steelers offensive line match up against the Rams defensive line? We're going to talk about DBs versus wide receivers, running backs versus middle linebackers, all those things. You really want to go down by position group because I think there's going to be some really interesting things about these teams. The other thing is that I feel like there's an energy around the Rams right now that necessarily there isn't, or there was what we want out of the Steelers. The Rams are on the rise. They've got their Cooper Kupp back. Matt Stafford's starting to play better. They don't have a running back. They're going to have Zach Evans this week. I took a defensive move in fantasy and brought him into my team so no one else could grab him. But they're a team that's starting to figuring themselves out, and they're kind of probably where we'd hope the Steelers are. So I kind of want to see the Steelers show up the Rams at the way the Rams have been playing in this game against the Rams. Now, the Steelers have an opportunity at no, it's not that. I think he's just playing pickleball. But the Steelers have an opportunity this week to go 4-2, cement their place atop the AFC North, particularly because they've got the 2-0 divisional lead. Then they can go home and play 3 games against Jacksonville, Green Bay, and the Tennessee Titans. And look, honestly, they win this week. There's no reason why they can't be. There's no reason why they can't be 7-2. Which would be huge. As I've said, kind of most of the season. I don't think the Steelers even have to win 11 games. I think 10 games getting into the playoffs, 11 cements it. So we'll see what happens there. But want to start off with the injury report. That's probably the best place, most logical place to start. There is some big news coming out of that. No, we skipped ahead there, computer. So Presley Harvin, full practice all week, good to go. Deontay Johnson, full practice all week, good to go. I don't think people realize, put the Matt Canada stuff aside. I struggle to do it. I know Mark, my co-host on this channel, usually can, but I can't. But Deontay Johnson is going to be key to this game. He is going to really stretch their defensive backs, and he's going to open up George Pickens, who's already had 225-yard games this week. NFL.com cited him as a game changer. He was the guy they had to stop. That's going to be really hard. I would expect Allen Robinson to have a big game this week, given he's come from the Rams, given he knows what's going on there. I actually think we'll see a really big game from Allen Robinson as well, even if it's not necessarily in the yards or a number of touchdowns, but it might be key catches on third down. But again, I have hope for that all season, and Matt Canada just has not produced that. Anyway, Deontay Johnson's back. That's good to see. Patrick Peterson was limited on Wednesday, not listed Thursday, not listed Friday. Game status, I don't know. Well, I mean, it doesn't provide it. I do know it just doesn't provide it. I'm less worried about that because I think Levi Wallace and Joe Porter Jr. are actually the best 2 cornerbacks on the roster based on form right now. Not pedigree necessarily, but form. Anthony McFarland's in. I actually think that's really important. I've talked a lot about this the last few weeks around the fact that the offensive line looks more built to a lot more built to fit a speedy back like a Jalen Warren or even an Anthony McFarland Jr. versus an Najee Harris. So I'm actually quite happy to see McFarland back. I think he might offer them something. But again, I thought they would see more creativity with Calvin Austin worked in, and we haven't seen that. So, it's hard. It's hard. We can only hope. Nick Herbig, limited Wednesday, Thursday, back Friday, which is really good. Obviously, it's just end of Friday now as we go live to air. So I think he'll play. That's fine. Dan Moore, practice all week, full practice. He's good to go. James Daniels, full practice, good to go. So they get their first string offensive line back. Again, I'm more in the Broderick Jones camp for this week. And do you play Dan Moore at right tackle? Did a video that came out last night on a trade for the offensive line. I'll talk about that later in this show. But yeah, Dan Moore's back. That's good news. You'd rather have the Steelers have a complement of 3 tackles than 2 tackles. Pat Freiermuth, full practice Wednesday, limited Thursday, did not practice Friday, out for the game. Now, you might look at that as a generic fan and say, or not a generic fan, but as a fan and say, hey, is it weird that he did full practice? Hamstrings are really hard to come back from. Hamstrings, I did athletics through my high school and university or college, and hamstrings are one that you've got to really, and particularly in a contact sport. I had a couple of mates, in rugby that hurt them. You've got to load them up and bring the load back. You've got to bring the load up, bring them back. If they can't get over the certain thresholds, you're going to be really struggling. So I do think this is not a surprise to me. I would rather him be fit for key matchups like the Titans, Green Bay, Jacksonville, where Kenny Pickett's going to need an outlet, particularly against the defense, against some of those teams. And I also don't want Pat to injure himself and be out for the season. But as Daredevil says, I hope they utilize Mount Washington more. Exactly. They've got to use Darnell better. I am excited because I do think it means that we'll see Rodney Williams. And I think that that's a real positive. I think he's a real bright spark from the offseason in terms of bringing him in through the preseason as well. But yeah, as you say, Jed, they can flare up out of nothing. They really do. I'm so thankful. I've broken a heap of bones. I've torn a heap of things, ankle ligaments, shoulder, all the rest of it. But knees and hammies, I've never had a problem with, which I'm so thankful for because yeah, they do suck. And they get people and they're very hard to come back from. So, the good news as well is he probably has some level of a tear. Even a grade 1 is technically a tear. I wonder if it's a grade 2 or 3, but if it was a 3, I think he would have been put on IR, like Deontay, but it is interesting. And then TJ Watt made the injury report. He didn't practice Wednesday, did not practice Thursday, full practice Friday. I think he'd be good to go. No issues there. But I also think perhaps there's some load management that goes on. Not that TJ would want that, but there probably will be a little bit of load management that goes on. And that's particularly helpful to have Herbig back. And obviously they've got Marcus Golden there as well. So that's super, super helpful. It's TJ's. I didn't hear anything about a heel. I thought it was still his finger. But if there is a heel thing that I haven't heard overnight, it's just gone early in my morning. Heel's injuries can be also difficult because you've got to be really careful that it's not an Achilles. And you've also got to be really careful as well that you're not looking at bone spurs. But, I've seen guys in sport like that, even if some people have super dry skin and you have a cracked heel, that can be pretty hard to run on. Hopefully TJ didn't crack his heel. Chet Temple, hope he didn't fall in his fall again. He'll be good to go. Oh yeah, I've just pulled it up on my other window. Yeah, heel. Look, I don't think it's anything to worry about. We'd know it by now. So at the moment we should be fine and hopeful, and I think that's the case. They would have ruled him out. Now let's flick to Los Angeles Rams because this is going to be a really good segue into what I wanted to talk about with matchups. Yeah, exactly, Jer. I've same. It's also funny because the heel and the foot is one where, in other places where you get pain and you're like, unless you get it fully medically diagnosed, you're like, oh, that's probably a bone bruise. A heel, you can kind of feel like that's like that, but it's obviously more muscle and soft tissue. Obviously, it's the way you strike everything through. When you walk or you run or you step off it or you bounce or you jump. So they have a lot of wear and tear. It's kind of funny that you don't hear about them more often, to be honest. But yeah, Los Angeles Rams. So Ernest Jones, their linebacker, is questionable. Laryl Murchison, a D tackle, I don't know really much about him, but he's out. Kyron Williams, their running back, is out. That puts a lot of pressure on Zach Evans, their running back. They have Ben Skronak, who is off their practice squad, I actually think. He's got an Achilles injury. He's questionable, limited all week. Don't think that's a major issue, how the Steelers game plan. Kobe Turner, their defensive tackle, full practice on Friday, so he should play. Joe Noteboom, their guard, has a groin injury. He was out Wednesday or limited Wednesday, Thursday, full practice Friday, so he's back. He's in their starting offensive line. Kevin Dotson, the ex-Steeler, is full practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It'll depend where he'll play in terms of depth. He hadn't, as of 2 weeks ago, played any starting snaps, so it'll be interesting. Darren Kendrick, the cornerback, who I had done a lot of interesting study on a couple of years ago when he was drafted. He's out for personal reasons. He's questionable. That guy's a weird backstory. Aaron Donald is resting. He'll play. Brian Allen, their center, he'll play as well, even though they didn't practice. I can't see those guys being out. So I don't see that as an issue. So overall, I think when you look at it, there's a lot of depth pieces for the Rams that are injured. Steelers, obviously the big name there is Pat Freiermuth, and we just hope none of the other guys that are on the injury report end up having anything wrong with them between now and the game against the Rams. Having a little sip of the coffee there. It's a lot when you're talking full stop on your own. Funny just for yeah, okay. The Gene, exactly. The O-line has to take care of them. So I think let's go into that. Let's look at those matchups. So let's start with the offense first. So you've got, the name there, Stetson Bennett. Now, Kyron Williams is out. So the out in the queue is questionable. Obviously, you got the IR. I've recently gone back to using some ESPN depth charts. They're actually quite helpful because they do something. But Matt Stafford, obviously, probably makes the Hall of Fame with his Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Obviously, huge with the Rams, cannon of an arm. They're all no surprises there. If you went QB versus QB, obviously he's going to be better than Kenneth Pierre. That's not an issue. It's interesting, though. So the Rams also recently just brought in Myles Gaskin as well. If you look at running back versus running back room, the Steelers probably win out on that. So that's that's a funny thing to say with the Steelers rushing attack where it is. But when you look at the difference between Royce Freeman, Myles Gaskin, Zach Evans versus, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, Anthony McFarland Jr., you kind of like that better. Now, the wide receivers will definitely in Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, sorry. Tutu Atwell, Demarcus Robinson. They're four guys that can cause you a bit of pain. Now, Tutu Atwell is someone that can, really smart with, some of the route running, really quick feet. Cooper Kupp obviously can do everything. A lot of deep balls, a lot of to the sideline balls. When you look at the highlights over the last couple of weeks from Cooper Kupp, I think the commentator at one point said Matt Stafford could only have thrown that ball to one person in that particular place, and that's Cooper Kupp. There was one that he toe drag swag toward the sideline, intermediate pass as well, so pretty strong sort of pass. Matt Stafford particularly is going to have to look at these guys in the short passing game as well because of the running backs. Now, Tyler Higbee is a very good tight end. I like Davis Allen, who they drafted out of Clemson. I actually really had hoped the Steelers might have found a way to grab him. I thought he would have been a really good fourth tight end if you count Connor Haywood as a tight end. But Higbee is going to be a problem for the Steelers defense. And I say that because I don't believe, because of how much the Steelers ask of Minka, I don't believe Neal has remotely played up to the standard of Terrell Edmonds, and a lot of people didn't love the way Terrell Edmonds played. I think Higbee could be a real problem. Now, I think Holcomb is moving around and is a lot faster than a lot of people think. I think Landon Robinson obviously comes down and tackles, so it'll be interesting to see how the Steelers defense actually scheme up against this, and whether it's Quan or Neal that has to shape up against Higbee, because Higbee could be a real problem. When you think about Cooper Kupp and what Higbee can do, one will be able to take pressure off the other, and I think that's going to be a problem. So I think when it comes to Steelers defensive backs, they're going to have their work cut out for them, and particularly if Pat Peterson isn't there. Now, I did talk about when we went through the injury report, the fact that I didn't feel that Patrick Peterson right now on form was a top 2 cornerback for the Steelers right now. But he does have experience, he does have maturity, and he'll keep this team level-headed on the road. So it is still an issue, I think, personally, if you don't have Pat P here because of the depth that is this, that is this wide receiving or receiver core, if you like, if you include Higbee, and considering the quarterback they've got back there in Matt Stafford. This isn't a DTR. This isn't even a Lamar with the way he throws, although Lamar did start carving him up. This isn't a Brissett. This, any of these sorts of guys, not even a Purdy. It's Matt Stafford here. So, the Steelers defensive backs really have to be on song. All right. We'll now look at the offensive line as well for the LA Rams. So the offensive line right now, Kevin Dotson is reserved back there. Now, Joe Noteboom, as we mentioned in the injury report, he looks like he's all right. They've got Alaric Jackson there at left tackle, Steve Avila, Brian Allen, Joe Noteboom, as I just mentioned there, and Rob Havenstein. Now, Rob Havenstein's one of the better right tackles in the league. Someone you don't hear a lot about, but does a really good job and really important, particularly when the amount of times you actually see Cooper Kupp line up on the right side of things. That tells you a lot of what you need to know. Ron McClendon Jr. is not a bad depth piece as well. Obviously, Kevin Dotson's in there. Now, that tells you everything you need to know about Steve Avila. I probably couldn't have talked more about Steve Avila in the draft process. He was honestly, I was so fingers crossed. I actually thought they would get him. I think he ended up drafting the 3rd round, which was when we ended up getting, I think they picked him about a few spots before Darnell, if my memory serves me correctly. But I was desperate for the Steelers to get Steve Avila. I thought he was going to completely fix this line. And would have meant that they would have had to do something to James Daniels. I've also, in the time, thought Steve Avila, I'd seen people talk about him potentially being one of the biggest centers in the league, but being a really good center and developing. So if Joe Noteboom had been out, you definitely would have seen Kevin Dotson promoted. He's obviously listed twice there on their depth chart as the main backup. As the main backup at the guard position. But they will do a lot of running to the left, and they will do a lot of running between Steve Avila and Brian Allen. Zach Evans is a bit more that bulky sort of downhill runner. They will look, and from what I've seen, he's not necessarily always the biggest running back, but he's definitely a guy. I think he's 215 pounds. We'll bring that up. But definitely, you will see runs through those two because those two guys can open holes. Yeah, that's right. He's downhill, but he's a smaller guy. Yeah, 202 pounds, bit of zip. But you will see them definitely run down between those two, all around to the right, when he's going to the outside of things. And Jay, you said, I feel like Pat P is always in better position. I did too, but I feel like Pat P's been it's probably more than half a second, but a second off the pace this year at times. And I've found that really frustrating in some of the games. He's looked better the last couple of weeks, but start of the season between him and Kazi, passed it on Kazi as well. Yeah, Jay, I put out a video in the last 24 hours, which I will link at this spot. But I basically put forward the idea, and we can talk about that, a trade of Chicks Okorafor to the New England Patriots for David Andrews, their center. I've always liked David Andrews. Mason Cole, the cap hit makes it not worth it. You'd rather have him as your backup center. But it actually works out very much cap-wise for the Pats, $5 million. Actually, if you look at the basis of points and trade values on NFL trade, sort of standards, you could actually trade a core for Jabril Peppers and get David Andrews. And I think Jabril would be a massive, massive step up on Keanu Neal. And how good would that be? But I like the idea of going and getting a veteran guy, just because I don't necessarily think there's a super great center right now. And I'm still going through my early draft process at the moment. We'll start that in a couple of weeks' time on the channel. But I think that the Steelers need to invest in maybe a right tackle or another top cornerback in the first round next draft to help the defense, to help Kenny Pickett if it's on the tackle side of things. So I'd rather them bring in a veteran center and help that gel with that line, and someone that then Siamalu doesn't have to bring up to standard, or that James Daniels doesn't have to bring up to standard. And particularly because I don't think James Daniels has been playing well, and he's on the last year of his contract next year. You watched it already. Cool stuff. Yeah, it definitely is with David Andrews. I might talk about it a little bit now, but I do. I'll save that video later. I've liked David Andrews for a long time. I wondered with him as well earlier in the season and even in the preseason where they go down this route, but I didn't talk about it because I didn't like Cole when they brought him in. I then got on the Cole train, as I like to say, at the second half of last year. I didn't like what I was seeing in preseason. I didn't like what I even saw at OTAs. I thought he was very average in camp as well from the things that I saw coming out on social media from camp. And then he's played awful this season. Problem is he's got a massive cap hit, so you may as well keep him. He's a massive cap hit if you want to cut him off and a massive cap hit for an offensive lineman that's not top tier. Like Steelers, I don't like the deal they did there, but he's actually a fairly serviceable backup. So I think you bring in someone like David Andrews. The other thing about David Andrews is it's not like he's sitting there going, I have to chase the Super Bowl. He has Super Bowls, but he could continue a very storied career. And ultimately, he's 31 right now. He's signed through this year and next year. So you can guarantee him for next year with Kenny Pickett. And I think you want the veteran experience. I did a show earlier in the start of the week around Mason Cole and the Josh Allen effect. They got rid of Russell Bodine and they brought in a better center in Mitch Morse into the Bills. And the trajectory of Josh Allen went way further, way quicker. He's started performing a lot better. You can say the same thing with Justin Herbert at the Chargers when they brought in Corey Linsley. So a center and a veteran setter is actually really key. We saw it back in the day. His name's escaping me, the guy that they brought in from Detroit in the center position back in the mid-2000s. But here at Steelers. But basically, my point is it'd be better to get a veteran now and build the line around it and then wait and pick our moment on a center. And even if you go and draft a center highly, apart from really Creed Humphrey and maybe Tyler Linderbaum, who I still think was overrated, there's not been many centers over the last 5, 6, 7 years where you can just immediately bring them in and they perform straight away. I mean, we saw the struggles with Kendrick Green. So I do really think the idea of bringing in a veteran center could be really helpful. And I just think the money matchup makes sense for the Patriots as well. And also, I don't think their tackles are that great. So they could really improve the right side of their offensive line if they brought in a Okorafor to line up next to Owenmu, or however you pronounce his name as well, at guard that they've got there. All right, now let's move to let's see. J-Double says, I have no issues with the defense. So far, it's the offense that needs to give them a break from 100%. I just don't think the Neil Kazi thing is working as well as they'd hoped. And Neil, strong safety is a hard one with the complexity of how the Steelers sometimes scheme. I do ask a lot, but that's just not worked out what I thought it would. Yeah, exactly, mate. The prevent defense, the third down defense is just still horrific. I don't know if we're ever going to fix that. I feel like that's our Achilles heel. But we'll see how that one works in this game. Hey, love it. Love the energy, Jeremiah. All right, cool. So moving to the defensive side of things. So obviously, Aaron Donald is the name here. Byron Young is not a bad player. Neither is Nick Hampton. Technically, from what they can do wide, they call him a wide linebacker, which is, I just find it funny when you see stuff like that. But yeah, their linebackers obviously missing something with not having Bobby Wagner in there. Their cornerbacks leave a bit to be desired, like a Keller Witherspoon. Darian Kendrick's questionable, but a Keller Witherspoon's lower on that chart. Kobe Durant, the best name, I mean, Quinton Lake, obviously the relation to Darnell Lake there, but Jordan Fuller is probably the number one person in the backs for them, apart from John Johnson III. They're playing Rusty Easton more, though. They really suffered from losing Tyler Rapp to the Bills in the offseason. I think that actually really cost this team from defensive back position. But really, it's a lot of young guys. It's a lot of names that people might not be familiar with. They've got to, their cap is all over the place, which they, sold the farm to win the Super Bowl. And so you see that effect in terms of who they have on their roster. They've obviously got a lot of money tied up between Stafford, Kupp, and Havenstein as well. And Higbee's on a fairly decent contract for a tight end as well. So you look at this and you go, come on, Steelers. If you can really protect yourself against Byron Young and Aaron Donald, you've got a really, really good chance to actually put some points on for once. And man, that's a good coffee that I made. And that's the thing that I think for Steeler fans, Mark said, has talked a lot last few weeks on his channel on Steeler Nation around the fact that the Steelers aren't going to do anything when it comes to Canada at this point. Even if he gets pushed to the side, as I said, like earlier in the week in the Mad Monday show we did, he gets pushed to the side. We're not going to see him necessarily fired this season. They've come out of the bye. There've apparently been all these hard conversations. He gave these arrogant press conferences, which he continues to have. You look at the defensive names on here. You get it right on the line, and they've got James Daniels back. They've got their starting offensive line that they're happy with over Broderick Jones. I would start Broderick Jones in this game to get the run game going early, because if the run game gets going in a stadium like SoFi in California in the warmer weather, I actually think this could be they could run riot, and I hope that would be the case. But this is the game, because the Tennessee Titans have a decent defense. Green Bay will have plays that can really hurt you in like Rashawn Gary and Jair Alexander and Kenny Clark and those sorts of guys. Jacksonville, again, a number of different guys defensive end, including Josh Allen there. They've got Kayvon Thibodeau. They've got the Jermaine Johnson? No, Kayvon Thibodeau. Trey Walker. Anyway, I'm having him to blink, but they got the guy they took first a couple of years back. They got a bunch of guys in the cornerbacks and DB room as well. Guys like Chad Moomer, guys like Devin Lloyd and linebackers. So the Steelers are about to go up against some very good defenses. If you can't get it right against this defense, you're kidding. You're absolutely kidding. Yeah, wow. Okay, it's 92 out here. So what's 92? 92F is I think it's 35 for me. Yeah, so we're 26. Yeah, so we're 78 right now, I think, for where I live in. 33C. Yeah, exactly. Young is really good. I kind of, the thing is that for the Steelers when they were drafting, I was because they already had Golden, I felt like that would have been a very that would have been a luxury pick for that term. But he's pretty good. He's a bigger linebacker. I think he's 6'5" and 265 pound. He might have lost a little bit since then. Yeah, there you go, 6'2", 250. It's hard because there was also a defensive end in this draft for a 4-3 that also had the same name. So that was kind of funny. But Nick Hampton's not a bad either. He's a 6'3", 235 pounds, bit of a faster linebacker. They haven't, obviously, it doesn't look like he's played this season so far, but he's a name that can surprise on the sheet. But yeah, I agree with you. Definitely on Sam. I totally agree. He can do stuff. Brian, he was the one out of Texas A&M or Tennessee. It's the other one, right? That's right. I always get confused between the two. But yeah, I think Jetta will bring it up. Yeah, I hope to see Witherspoon burned by DJ and Pickens. 100%. I think this is the thing. It's and it speaks exactly to what I've been saying. Yeah, Bama. That's it, Sam. That's it. So you see, this is the problem. When I'm doing the podcast on my own, I haven't finished my coffee. So that's, I'm still, my brain's still trying to compute some things. But definitely we've got to expose this. And that's where it kind of sucks to not have Pat Freiermuth here. But surely, as Daredevil said, you can activate Mount Washington. Surely you can get Calvin Austin into this mix. Because when I look at this, I think Calvin Austin could run riot against these guys. Absolutely run riot. I talked about that from the running backs as well. It's definitely a nut up or shut up game for the Steelers. They're a rising Ram side that's coming to this game with confidence, and that's going to mean that they're gonna start out the game absolutely pumped, energy, ready to go. The Steelers start slow, and that is where you sort of get down the path of, you're playing. Everyone's human. You got to go on the field. You can only as good as your opposition. You got to play up to your opposition. You sometimes play down to their opposition. The Steelers are known for that. The Steelers start well in this game and crack that confidence. I feel like that this could be a big scoring game. Now, not necessarily from the offense from the Steelers. I'm not going to sit here and say the Steelers can score 3 offensive touchdowns right now until they do it 2 weeks in a row. But the Steelers' defense against the offense of the Rams, if they can put pressure on them and they can create short fields so they can create turnovers, maybe even score a few points themselves, there could be a fairly decent score in this game. You don't want this to be a shootout. If this is a shootout, Steelers are going to lose. Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, I'm betting on that. And Tutu Atwell with a bit of support from Puka Nakua. I'm sorry, I'm not picking the Steelers in that one yet. I just don't see it. I don't think Canada's got the creativity and playbook to get that done. But if the Steelers can hold the ball, if the Steelers can make sure they convert, on a lot more on second down than what they do, they can increase that by 50%. They can hold on to the football. They will score some points. They can score 25 points plus in this game if they're careful with the football and the defense can create that. But there is no excuse for the offense in this game because really I can go to the schedule and I can look at what's coming up. And honestly, this is going to be one of the easiest games that the Steelers are going to have for quite a while, right? Because once we go home, we play Tennessee, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Green Bay, right? Then we go away to Cleveland. Then we go away to the Bengals. It is going to honestly be one of the easiest games from a defense who they're playing pretty much till they get to Arizona. And Arizona has been no slouch either. So it's now or never for this Steelers team. They've really got to do it. But think about it. Like, let's say they go and beat the Rams, lose at home to Jacksonville, beat Tennessee, beat Green Bay, go in 6-3 against Cleveland and the Bengals. They win one of those games. They're 3-1 in the division. I mean, the season starts to really work out for them. So I do think with this Rams game, if the offense is going to fire, like, now's the time. Jess says, let's see how this run game is coming out of the bye. Warren space. Well, that's exactly it. I think if you hit on the head, Jer, it's like the 1-2 punch now. I think it's there's been a lot of narrative this week about Najee and the fifth year option. Those of you that are regulars, like, most of you here in the live chat, like I've been talking about this, but pretty much since the season started. Like, it'll be interesting to see what the Steelers do with Najee's fifth year option. I've said it at least on 5 occasions. That being said, I don't think we can have this weekly watch. Will they sign it? Will they not? Will they sign it? Will they not? Like, no, I think that's going to be painful. But quite honestly, I love Najee, but like, I don't think it's the fifth year option. I didn't think you go and do that. I think you go in this year's draft, you go in the 3rd round, you go get a guy to learn from them both, to learn from a year. Maybe the guy needs to put on a bit of size. Maybe that's not coming out. Maybe it's got as an injury concern. You want to see what that looks like. So I definitely think there are options there. But yeah, I think, as I said, I think this Steelers offense is one where they've really got to show up. We saw some progression against Baltimore. Hopefully they start taking the shackles off Kenny Pickett a bit more. I think that's what I'm interested. That's one of the narratives I'm interested to see coming out of the bye. Is last year down the stretch, Kenny Pickett did better as he was given more control and choice over the plays. That's when he's played well in these games. So hopefully at the bye, it's like he's been able to say, hey, I've done the study. This is what I like. This is what I didn't. This is what I want to do coming out of the bye, and that they can give him more freedom because now he's played a season's worth of games. He's played 17 games, so he's ready to go. Chair says Warren should be number 1 low. We need both in the long run, especially if it's simple. 100%. We need 2 guys. We 100% need 2 guys. No issues there at all. I completely agree. I think you can't survive in the NFL now without 2 guys, which is kind of funny because I have Brian Robinson Jr. in fantasy, and I am shocked to see that they don't use Gibson more, or that they didn't. I think, yeah, I heard. But yeah, anyway, it's just you do need the 1-2 punch. We've seen that definitely overall. Oh, good coffee. I won't put coffee drip videos on like Mark does on Steeler Nation Australia, though, that channel. But yeah, so as I said, offense really key for me. But the defense as well, I want to go back to that. We kind of we didn't skip through it, but we got through it pretty quickly. When we look at what where the key defensive matchups are going to be, let me point to that. The website wants to fight with me. Great. That's all right. We can just go back. Cool. So yeah, when we look at the defense, so let's go back to this offensive line. TJ Watt could have a real field day this week. as could Alex Highsmith. Now, this is where it's so disappointing not to have Cam Hayward, because as much as I like Steve Avila, I would love to see Avila and Allen have to deal with Cam Hayward. But I do like the idea. Now, Benton went to the Senior Bowl. Avila was at the Senior Bowl. Benton was one of the hardest guys to stop. I do like the idea of Benton going up against this interior offensive line for the Rams. Why do I like it as well? Brian Allen was rested this week. That was more of a veteran thing. But Joe Newtboom, we talked about on the injury report, he's coming back. I really think between Ogunjobi and Benton, Leal's back as well, pretty fast. He could cause Jackson, I think, a few problems if they do that matchup. I really like the defensive line matchup against these guys. So as much as I am really concerned about the defensive backs against the receivers, including the tight end from the Rams, I do really love the way the defensive ends and tackles for the Steelers and pass rushers could match up against this. This will be one of the hardest days for Matt Stafford in a long time, which is why, as we said earlier, which we could say for any game, but why I really think it's important the offense actually control the football, because the defense will be able to return it to them. It's going to be very high stakes. You are going to see, I think, in a lot of this game where it'll be 3rd and long. Stafford will get to convert, still struggle with 3rd and long, but I just think you're going to see the pass rush really, really hurt them early on, and they're going to struggle to establish the run game. If Holcomb, E-Rob, and Benton can crush that can crush the run game at the start, they're going to really fold in on what they're going to do. So I think the Steelers are going to have a really good game from a defensive perspective this week. And again, that's why this is basically, I think, the overall summation with what I was talking about with the offense against the Rams defense, given what the Steelers defense is going to do in stopping the Rams. There is just zero excuse for the offense this week. Absolutely zero excuse. Jet Devil says, I still really like Najee. He just needs the line to open actual holes, not 3. 100%. But this is what I've said before. This line was not built for a running back like Najee Harris. I think they've got the right offensive line coach in Pat Mayer. I think they've got the right person in Broderick Jones. I think Dan Moore could be that at right tackle with his agility. I think Sam Marlowe is that way. But Cole and Daniels could be. I actually thought Dotson probably better with that run game style. But I mean, I think he's got some things in the head in terms of work ethic and will and maturity and stuff like that. But I honestly, I can't even with Mason Cole anymore. I just can't. I really like Spencer Anderson. I just think he's really raw. I think next year you'll find he's fighting for a spot. Jet Devil says, I really don't want to see any more LBs on Kupp on Nakua. 100. But you and I both know we're going to see that. If we do, I think Quan's kept a bit of speed enough that maybe, but no. My other things, I don't think necessarily see LBs. You'll see basically a pseudo LB in this is going to have 100%. Keanu Neal is going to end up marked up against him. It'll be a bit like the whole Bostic and Keenan Allen thing a couple of years back, because they'll play Kazi because they need him back there in case Kupp breaks free or Tutu Atwell or Puka Nakua. And they're going to be made to look stupid. I can see a few plays happening like that. And that's why there'll be some ridiculous third and longs after Highsmith and TJ have crushed them in the backfield for a sack, or close down the run in the backfield. And then we're going to see stuff like that happen, because you and I both know they're going to do this because that's just what they do. I think so, Jeremiah. I think that maybe in this game, defense can help out with the offense with the takeaway or two, even a defensive score. Yeah, I do think if you look at it with the offense the way it is, I think the line troubles they're going to have, you are going to see it. I quite think part of me was like, when I was thinking about if I was making a bold prediction, Cole Holcomb with an interception because of a pass that, is tipped out, or because a pass that's tipped by the defensive line and he catches it, something like that. I think that's going to be key. The other thing I could see with this, the way this offensive line is set up, particularly with the new running back situations, if there's some long downs, I could see them trying to rush Shandon Sullivan a bit like what they did at times in the preseason as well. So that could be something interesting. Yeah, he has been playing better week by week. He's just started a lot slower than what I thought he did. Yeah, and you've said that he's got a lot to improve on. He has looked better. He looked better against play before the rain. Yeah, he has. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I think, but this is sort of game and the sort of receivers that he's going to get showing up, and I don't think he's got the speed to keep up with Higbee. That's just me. Sam says maybe start Warren and then Najee in the second half of the game and make him hungry like Bettis. Yeah, maybe. I'm trying the other tactic at the moment in Madden, actually, where I swap them around the other way. Just punch Najee for the first quarter and a half and batter and bruise them and then get Warren in there. But the thing about Najee that I can't understand, and I feel like a broken record player, I feel like I've been saying this since week 3 or 4 last year. Why aren't they using Najee in the short passing game like Ben did? Now, a lot of people can say they try to, it doesn't work. They're the offensive line, it's quick, but all these things. But I just overall putting all those factors in, considering all those factors, they still don't really do that. And that's where I think you could have sets where they're both on the field with Warren and Najee and Washington and Connor Hayward. And the team's going to think it's a run set and see short passing, it's his intermediate passing. There's some cuts that Kamara does into the middle of the field. Yeah, Najee is not necessarily the agile athlete that Alvin Kamara is, but you give him the ball between those linebackers at almost 6'3", he's like 6'2" and 2/3 or something, and 242 pounds, particularly if Kenny Pickett's going to line up in the shotgun, they're going to run it. Well, he's getting him to cut into the middle of the field instead. I just think that there's a massive missed opportunity from that. And when you've got both on the field, the other team's going to be going, we've got to come down and do the run. And if they can break free and Kenny Pickett can just do a simple lob over the top, it's going to be lights out if there ends up being like a slot corner on him. He's going to smack him. So I just don't think Najee's being used properly. And that's the other thing, is even if Najee was killing it at the moment or doing 50% better, why are you going to pay the 5th-year option for someone that you don't even know how to use right? But then again, with Matt Canada going at the end of the season, maybe they'll figure that out. Yeah, it's good closer strategy. I agree. Jeremiah says, with Ogunjobi and Benton on the line, TJ and Highsmith thrusting on the edge, the Rams can't double him. Well, that's exactly it. And that's why I think you're going to see guys like Benton and Leal actually maybe get some interesting stats this week. I also think watch for the rushing of the linebackers. The linebackers have looked at time. I've noticed it kind of since I didn't think it happened enough in the 49ers game, if at all. It didn't happen against Cleveland that well. But I do think that I've seen more in the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks from the Steelers around potential to rush through the middle, and watch that happen, I think. It didn't happen enough against the Texans, and I think you saw that obviously play out on the scoreboard. But I could actually see one of the middle linebackers having a sack or two, or definitely tackles for a loss when it's going to stop the run through the middle there. I think it's defensive matchup works well for the Steelers. It's just that if Matt Stafford gets the ball away, we're in trouble. Yeah, agree. Totally. Sam says, true, our O-line started playing better than the last. Yeah, definitely. I think that the Steelers definitely improve as the season goes on, and that's a great thing. I just think we need to see that sooner because we need wins. You can't. Steelers are never going to make an AFC championship or be a true Super Bowl contender if they're just going to rely on getting it together and their pride down the stretch. But I want to open up to questions as well so in the last sort of 5, 10, 15 minutes of the show, depending on how many questions we've got, I want to open up to your questions. So live chat, please throw them in there. I'm pretty much wrapping up everything I wanted to sort of talk about in this matchup so far. But yeah, throw your stuff into your questions there. Gene says, no more 3rd and 30. Oh, I know. It absolutely kills me. And sometimes I'm like, I get that you want to pass rush on that and take it and take advantage of, even better field game, possession game. But sometimes I'm like, just let them throw it short. Concede 10 yards and then just concede the 10 yards and get them off the field. I think there's some Steelers. occasionally on third and longs. I mean, if it's third and 12 or third and 14, you got to think about the personnel you're matching up against and what you've done defensively in that game. But if you're like third and 18 and stuff like that, sometimes I'm just like, I mean, the Steelers can't play to prevent that well at the moment, as Jess said earlier in the live chat. But like, I do think sometimes just concede it. Like, if you look at the top teams in the NFL, go back and watch most of the playoffs last year. The teams that made it into the championship games and made the Super Bowl, particularly in the Super Bowl, it's a lot of just like conceding 4 yards, conceding 6 yards, conceding 8 yards, and bend and don't break, and just letting time tick over if you trust your own offense to score points. Now, the Steelers don't trust that at the moment, so they are throwing the kitchen sink at them. But maybe actually not letting them convert is better than, I think the Steelers could allow a bit more yardage on some of those third and longs and just get the other team off the field. That's the most important thing. I don't think it's about necessarily field territory with this Steelers offense, because they've got good wide receivers and they've got some good options at running back and they've got some good tight ends. But I do think it's about the number of possessions, because this needs possession. This team currently with the offense the way it is, it needs possessions to get into a rhythm. They have guys that can make big plays. George says, with the exception of Claypool and Bush, all the other play steals that go in the last few years seem to flourish. Yeah, I mean, Johnson's not doing that well. He can't crack this team, and neither is Green. But yeah, a lot of the time that does happen, 100%. Yeah, I completely back you on that. Yeah, Toddy, exactly. 74 receptions, a rookie, and 46 cents. Now, it's different when you have Big Ben. But Big Ben, we were all getting cranky at how fast he threw the ball out. And Kenny Pickett doesn't have to throw it as much. Now, Kenny Pickett can scramble. But if Kenny Pickett can scramble and Kenny Pickett has mobility, that gives Najee a chance to basically start running down the field. That gives Najee a chance to, basically have screen runs without actually needing to call a screen play. I just, honestly, it frustrates the living shit out of me. Good question, Gene. Who is the winning piece this week? I kind of want to take a cop out on offense. You can all hear my throat starting to go. Wu-Tang forever. Who's on this week? It's really hard to go away from Jaylen Warren, given like the fact of what he's done in the receiving game and the run game. I would have said Pat Freiermuth if he was in the lineup. I think it's Pickett. And I think it's Pickett for two reasons. I think obviously that's easy to say, like quarterback needs to play well. I actually think it's the mobility and run game. I think you're going to see a bit of that more from Kenny this week. I do think as well. And I think on the defense, if I'm going to say it, I think Porter Jr. has a big game, because Porter Jr., I'm kind of keen for him to see if he can play some man and swap him up against Nakua and Kupp. I think Porter Jr. could have a massive game. I'm not going to say, he's had one interception against the Ravens. He's going to come out and get two against the Rams. But he could have some big pass defenses. He could play some of the weighty downs and play well. Yeah, what is the glue? Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. So rather than player, I think it's defensive line. Defensive line for the Steelers, particularly the interior defensive line. They could absolutely shut down this offense big time, 100%. And it's something that, I mean, I know we're a long way removed from the Super Bowl against the Bengals and the Rams, but they didn't do that enough in that game. The Bengals in interior pressure to Matt Stafford, and I think it cost them the Super Bowl. They also didn't run the rock enough. Pittsburgh Toddy says Gorilla Grew. And I love that. Sam Oliver says, I can see Warren getting screenplay. Yeah, exactly. I think they're going to look to activate Warren early and often. Same with Calvin Austin. I think Calvin Austin's your X factor in this game. Although it's funny, I said that, I remember saying that a few weeks ago, who's the X factor, and I was like, I'm not going to say Calvin Austin because I feel like he's the X factor in every game. But I think he could cause the defensive backs a headache, and I think he could cause the linebackers some headaches as well, through some sweep plays and stuff like that. So yeah, I think they're two key guys for the Steelers. Number 4. Awesome. Well, with that, I think we're going to wrap up this week's Steelers Touchdown Under. I hope you guys like the show. Really keen to get back into some more matchup stuff away from some coaches. Again, guys, I think this is going to be a huge game for the Steelers in terms of not necessarily the matchup that they've got. I don't think it's necessarily the game on the calendar that people are circling like that's the biggest game of the season. But I do think that it's a massive game for the Steelers in terms of if they're serious about turning it around after the bye. The game straight after the bye that needs to be there. I think Mike Tomlin as well is like 11-4 coming out of the bye, so something like that. So pretty big from that. They should respond. But it goes back to what Mark's asked me a question before the Ravens game on this show of like, what would give me confidence and seeing a decent score. I want to see the Steelers win by 6 to 8 points and just play fluid offense. If they play fluid offense, that's enough because the defense will give them the opportunity. But also the Steelers defense can't do it if they're going to be on the field more than 55% of the time versus the offense. So, yeah, let's see if they can get it together. As always, hope you guys have a great weekend. Hope you have a good Friday night for those that listen live and tuned in the live chat. Thank you for participating as well. It makes it everything, particularly when you're on your own on the show. But yeah, hope you have a great weekend. As always, go Steelers.